Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 Midnight News coming to you live from the capital Algiers, and these are tonight's top stories. As the EU reaffirms the importance of Algeria as a strategic energy partner, Algeria calls for establishment of regional office for the housing and shelter company in Africa. Polisario Front reaffirms the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and holds the international community responsible for delaying the resolution of the conflict in Western Sahara. And the daily killings in the occupied Palestine Zionist forces execute 2 young Palestinians, and hundreds of settlers stormed the village of Shufa and Al-Aqsa Mosque with protection from the entity's authorities. Expanded European meetings in Spain to discuss defense issues, immigration, and the crisis in Karabakh. Borrell criticizes the absence of Turkey and Azerbaijan from the summit. Hello again and welcome. Starting from the African continent, France will begin withdrawing its troops from the coup-hit Niger this week after President Emmanuel Macron said last month he refused to be held hostage by putschists and was ending military cooperation with the West African country. In a statement on Thursday, the French Armed Forces Ministry said that troops would return to France and that military exit should be complete by the end of the year. In the strongest words possible, Algeria denounced the terrorist assault that targeted a military force detachment in Taiba, Niger, and resulted in dozens of fatalities and injuries. Algeria's full support for the Republic of Niger and its people, as well as its commitment to preserving peace and stability in this nation, were emphasized in a statement released by the Foreign Ministry. The same source also stated that Algeria requested more international collaboration and coordination at the regional and global levels to combat terrorism, which hinders efforts to establish security and development in the Sahel region and across the African continent. Algerian Prime Minister Mr. Ayman bin Abdurrahman has called on the board of directors of the Company for Habitat and Housing in Africa, Shelter Afrique, meeting in Algeria to create a regional office in Algeria devoted to North African and Sahel countries, especially in light of transforming the company into a financial institution aimed at funding projects in the African countries. During his speech on the occasion of the opening of the proceedings of the second day of Extraordinary General Assembly of Shelter Afrique, bin Abdurrahman stressed that Algeria will work to fulfill its obligations toward this body.
Today's meeting is of a paramount importance and constitutes another building block and milestones in strengthening and unifying visions in our African countries, especially ahead of the approval on transforming the Company for Habitat and Housing in Africa, Shelter Afrique, into a financial institution in charge of funding projects in the African continent, in addition to giving a new dynamic likely to meet the needs of our African peoples. In this respect, I'm pleased to renew our strong will to strengthen joint action among all African states. I also seize this opportunity to call for the creation of a regional office of Shelter Afrique in Algeria, and which will be devoted to the countries of North Africa and the Sahel. We will also work relentlessly to honor all the commitments provided for in the Articles of Associations of this eminent body.
The Prime Minister also affirmed Algeria's readiness to export its expertise in the field of housing and put it at the disposal of African countries.
إن بلاد الجزائر إدراكاً منها لأهمية.
Aware of the importance of this partnership, Algeria attaches special interest to integrated projects likely to boost development in our African continent. As an example, in the field of infrastructure, 90% of the African Union Road, which stretches over 10,000 kilometers and which links Algeria with Nigeria through Tunisia, Mali, Niger, and Chad, was completed. All these national capabilities and skills have prepared Algeria to export its expertise and put it at the disposal of the brotherly African countries and support them in various development programs with the required quality and cost.
In the same line of thoughts, or rather in a related matter, the fifth annual meeting of the high-level political dialogue on energy between the European Union and Algeria was held in Brussels under the co-chairmanship of the Commissioner for Energy of the Commission of the European Union, Ms. Kadri Simpson, and the Minister for Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arqab. Building on the very successful results of clean energy projects, the EU, together with its Algerian counterparts, have stated that 50 million euros worth cooperation program underpinned by priorities identified through the dialogue.
الجزائر ستبقى دائما المورد.
Algeria will always remain a key gas supplier for Europe. Algeria's commitments in terms of supply have always been solid and consistent, despite the difficult conditions, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic that impacted the world.
في الفترة الأخيرة من الكوفيد التي شهدت العالم وكانت الجزائر.
Algeria was a reliable and safe supplier in terms of gas supplies to Europe, not to mention the additional supplies destined to the European market.
إضافية بالنسبة للسوق الأوروبية.
And when it comes to bilateral projects to cut emissions, the Algerian Minister of Energy indicated that conversation with the Europeans had been productive.
حوارنا اليوم كان جد مثمر.
Our talks today with the European side were very fruitful, especially the projects that we are undertaking together in various fields relating to hydrocarbons, notably the projects aimed at curbing gas emissions, including methane gas emissions, which is a priority for us in Algeria.
On the other side, European Union Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson confirmed that Algeria is a strategic sector in the field of energy, noting the interest in enhancing supplies from Algeria.
Algeria has been and continues to be an important and reliable energy supplier to the EU. Algeria has been a key partner for our gas security of supply last year. It is the second largest pipeline gas exporter to the EU and a very important LNG supplier. We discussed today the changing gas market situation and the short and medium-term outlook. Algeria is a strategic partner for the EU. Algeria has also a strong potential beyond the gas sector, and our bilateral energy dialogue has covered all aspects of energy policy.
And a different matter now, in his speech before the Fourth Committee on Decolonization at the United Nations, the representative of the Polisario Front at the UN and coordination with the Minurso, Sidi Mohamed Omar, affirmed that the Sahrawi people will never give up the inalienable and non-negotiable right to self-determination.
Addressing the world from the podium of the UN Special Political and Decolonization Committee, the representative of the Polisario Front at the United Nations and coordinator with Minurso, Sidi Mohamed Omar, highlighted some of the basic facts underlying the question of Western Sahara as a decolonization issue that has been on the agenda of this committee since 1963.
The people of Western Sahara have an inalienable and non-negotiable right to self-determination and independence, a right that cannot be affected by the lapse of time or the realities created by force by the occupying state of Morocco in the territory. Second, the General Assembly has recognized our right to legitimate struggle, and the Sahrawi people will never give up our right to use all legitimate means to defend our rights.
The fall of the Moroccan occupation state into contradictions in its priorities clearly demonstrates the distortion of what it calls for in the United Nations, which is classified by the Polisario Front on the lists of shame and humiliation of the UN body.
It's really a shame and insult to the United Nations and its charter to see a rogue nation such as the occupying state of Morocco comes before this committee, along with its apologists, to talk about international law and human rights, at a time when it continues to illegally occupy parts of a territory on the list of this committee and to oppress its people. This is a situation that cannot go any longer. The only way forward is to enable the people of Western Sahara to exercise freely and democratically their right to self-determination and independence, because they are strongly determined to use all means legitimate to defend our rights.
It is the call of the Polisario Front from the United Nations premises to make the voice of the Sahrawi people heard, the people who desire to be the decision makers in their own fate, and to whom all legitimate means of defending their rights will remain the only way.
In African matters, still Mohamed Takala, the president of the Libyan High Council of the State, emphasized the necessity for all Libyans parties to commit to the political process in order to end the country's crisis. Once the vote on the 6+6 committee's recommendations was resumed, Takala placed special emphasis on ways to develop enforceable legislative documents that would guide the nation toward inclusive national elections with universal acceptance of the results.
We emphasize the necessity for all parties involved in the political process and concerned with resolving the crisis to commit to resuming this process by examining and addressing controversial issues and proposing ways to reach an enforceable legal framework that leads to holding comprehensive national elections, the result of which everyone accepts.
And within the same country, the Supreme Council announced its refusal to make any amendment to the laws of the 6+6 committee in response to the Libyan parliament that issued amendments, or rather amended laws regarding the election of the President of the State and the National Assembly.
In a move that was described as one-sided by the Libyan Supreme Council of State, sparking outrage and criticism, the Speaker of the Libyan House of Representatives, Aguila Saleh, decided to issue the electoral laws in their amended version from the 6+6 committee by publishing them in the official newspaper.
The House of Representatives issued the law to elect the President of the State and the law to elect the National Assembly in accordance with the 13th Constitutional Amendment and in accordance with what was approved by the 6+6 Committee, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives ordered that they be referred and delivered to the High National Election Commission.
In response to the House of Representatives' action, which stated that it had based these laws on what had been agreed upon, Mohamed Takala, the president of the Libyan Supreme Council of State, emphasized that the council adheres to the outcomes issued by the Joint Committee for preparing electoral laws, declining to make any additional changes to them.
We did not interfere in the work of the committee, as their work was final, and they voted unanimously on it. And these outputs, signed by both parties, were referred for issuance. Accordingly, we affirm our adherence to the results of the committee's work in its version that ended on June 3, 2023. And we call for investing in those efforts and building on them, and we don't permit making other amendments done under any pretext.
The course of Libyan elections has plunged into a tunnel of ambiguity and hidden disagreements at a time when observers are counting on the position of the UN mission and the international community to decide the direction of the political process.
In the Middle East now, 2 Palestinians were killed by Zionist occupation forces in Tul Karam and 100 others were injured in the Balata refugee camp as extremist settlers stormed the tomb of the Prophet Yusuf under the protection of occupation soldiers. Palestinian prisoners protested against the mistreatment of detainees by Itamar Ben-Gvir by closing prison sections. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry condemned these violations and the ongoing incursions by occupation forces into Palestinian cities, viewing them as part of an official Zionist policy aimed at annexing the West Bank, including East Al-Quds. Now in Europe, EU leaders gathered in Granada, Spain, to discuss defense, immigration, EU expansion, strategic independence, and regional conflicts, notably Ukraine war. Thursday is dedicated to a meeting of the European political group involving the 27 EU countries and 20 non-EU European countries. On Friday, meetings are limited to EU leaders. This comes as Poland opposes any EU agreement on illegal immigration, including migrants' resettlement.
Poland doesn't go to the European Council to just say a hard no, hard veto to imposing the illegal migrants on Poland, whichever quotas, numbers they are. I'm going to Granada to the European Council summit to put a hard veto, but also lay down a plan on the table, which I spoke about 3 months ago. A plan that is the only possible remedy to what is happening when it comes to illegal migration.
In a similar thought, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan met with EU leaders on the sidelines of a summit of the European political community in the Spanish city of Granada. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, reaffirmed their unwavering support to Armenia on Thursday after meeting Pashinyan. It's worth noting that Azerbaijan last month seized back control of region populated by ethnic Armenians, prompting more than 100,000 of them to flee to Armenia.
One thing that was important for me, along with President Charles Michel and French President Macron, was to speak with the Armenian Prime Minister, with whom I have had many phone conversations in recent days. We tried here to find ways that could guarantee the safety and independence of Armenia, and we'll do everything in our power to stop the situation escalating and to stop a military escalation between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Leaders from the European political group across EU nations are meeting in Granada, Spain, with Ukraine's battle against Russia and Karabakh issue at the forefront. More in this report.
The Granada summit, located in southern Spain, marks a crucial moment in Europe's ever-changing geopolitical landscape. The third European conference since the European political community's inception. It offers nations a platform for dialogue beyond the EU's borders, amidst ongoing challenges posed by the Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky presented the Granada summit and underlined the need for preserving European unity in face of a substantial Russian disinformation campaign.
The main challenge is what we have, that is to save unity in Europe. And I'm speaking not only about the countries in EU, in all the Europe. I think that is the biggest challenge what we'll have, because Russia will attack by information, disinformation, by fakes and etc.
Zelensky's aspirations seem closer to reality, notably through Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who pledged to supply Ukraine with a Patriot air defense system. This commitment is vital, especially as doubts linger about continued Washington support, amplified by Congress' decision to dismiss Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy.
Here in the European Union, we're working on a package of 50 billion euros for Ukraine for the years 24 to 27. This is very important because Ukraine needs predictability and reliability in the direct budget support. As far as I oversee the situation in the United States, I'm very confident of support for Ukraine from the United States. What the United States is working on is the timing.
Concurrently, in Sochi, southern Russia, the Valday Dialogue Club features Russian President Vladimir Putin, emphasizing Ukraine's reliance on Western assistance.
If such aid were to cease abruptly, Ukraine's capabilities would diminish rapidly. This holds true for their defense system. Imagine this: if aid stops tomorrow, their endurance will last just a week, until their ammunition depletes.
As Ukraine balances hope for sustained support and Russia's expectations of its rapid depletion, Western aid remains a lifeline Ukraine clings to, at least for now.
President Vladimir Putin of Russia on Thursday reiterated his position that Russia did not start the so-called war in Ukraine, but launched what it calls a special military operation to try to stop it. In his early speech to the Validate Discussion Club being held in Sochi, Putin said that Russia, the world's largest country by area, had no need to take territory from Ukraine.
There is this ever-increasing military and political pressure. We have to respond. I have said many times that we did not start the so-called war in Ukraine. On the contrary, we are trying to end it. It was not us who worked a state coup in Kiev in 2014, bloody and anti-constitutional. Wherever it happens, we always hear the mass media, mostly of course serving the Anglo-Saxon world, saying, you can do that. It's against the law and democracy. But here, they could. They even named the amount of money they spent on this revolt. They are trying to cast everyone who is not ready to blindly follow these Western elites as the enemy anymore.
Russian airstrike in Kharkiv, eastern Ukraine, resulted in the tragic loss of at least 49 lives, as a report by Ukrainian authorities. President Volodymyr Zelensky initially confirmed the death of 48 individuals in a village near Robanyansk, close to the Russian army's front line, condemning this act as a brutal crime. Regional Governor Oleg Singorobov later confirmed the death toll at 49. Russia plans a naval base on the Black Sea coast of the breakaway Georgian region of Abkhazia. The leader of the region was quoted on Thursday as saying by Istivsia newspaper.
Most recently, Abkhazia celebrated two holidays, Recognition Day and Victory and Independence Day. I want to congratulate you again, to wish you all the best to you, to all of Abkhazia, to all the people of Abkhazia. At the beginning of our conversation, I would like to note that, in general, the situation is developing well. Our trade turnover has increased by 73% over the past year.
And for his part, the governor of the Abkhazia region, Aslan Bzania, said that there is a remarkable coordination between the two sides, pointing to the need to strengthen cooperation with Moscow.
We note with satisfaction that our relations have recently witnessed additional momentum. There is a coordination process underway. Much has been done for this coordination, and there is still much to be done. So this is what brings our positions closer, with the creation of a single social, economic, and defense space. This is very important. We're doing this, and we will continue to do so.
Georgia expressed concern over plans to establish a Russian naval base in the Abkhazia region, viewing it as a violation of its sovereignty. The Georgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that these actions constitute a blatant violation of Georgia's sovereignty. Now, ending up our news bulletin with the sport news. Saudi Arabia has confirmed it will bid for the 2034 FIFA World Cup, with Australia saying it is still exploring the possibility of entering the race for the tournament. Countries have been given just 25 days to decide whether to bid for 2034, meaning Australia does not have long time to make such an important decision before the October 31st deadline. This means that Saudi Arabia, which has long been planning a pursuit of the World Cup, could have a clear path to hosting the tournament.
Well, hosting a World Cup in Saudi Arabia would mean everything to us. We are a football nation, and this is what dreams are made of for all the generations, young and old, boys and girls.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for taking part with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself and have a blessed Friday. Good night.